Animation has been around since the early 20th century. It's been growing and improving to this day. I talked to a maker and teacher of animation about how it works.
What type of work do you do?
I've gone through the whole history really with animation. I started off doing very traditional stop frame animation work. I come from a set design background, so I was more interested in sort of like designing the characters, designing the backgrounds. The final stage for that for me, working in animation, was getting the things to move, but I was really concentrating on the whole visual look of the animation work. And I think that transferred through into my development through the years with animation, where I've always been more interested in the visual side of the animation work rather than the narrative, rather than the storytelling side of things. So I moved from doing a lot of stop frame animation work into using digital processes. Now the first digital process I tended to use were 2D. The 2D processes, so I started doing a lot more drawing animation work, a lot more college animation, taking it to the computer, manipulating it within the computer. And then from that I learned to use more 3D software. Things like 3D Studio Max is the one I tend to use the most now. But again, what I've always enjoyed about the digital process, which is the way I tend to work now, is the fact that I can actually still do it in a very creative and experimental way. I don't tend to do the same things with 3D animation software that you'll see a lot of other people doing around. So.
What is cartoon or drawn animation?
Cartoon drawn animation is, I would describe it as the most basic and easiest way of actually getting to do any kind of animation work. It is purely a process of actually drawing from one piece of paper to the next, tracing through the movement and then filming it to get the movement of the characters there. The other way I tend to describe drawn animation really is it's a very similar process to what you tended to do when you were at school, which is drawing the little characters in the corner of the books, the old flip book type things. The only difference is you're going to film them rather than just flick them through there. It's one of those areas which I think has undergone a real sort of boom time really, especially over the last 10-12 years with people like Nick Park coming along and producing work, the Creature Comforts work and the Wallace and Gromit things as well. I like it because it has instilled a whole amount of, it's injected a whole sort of new area of passion for animation within this country, which had pretty much gone by the time you got to sort of the late 1980s, early 1990s. It was just almost non-existent as animation in this country again, apart from the few experimental artists that was there, apart from a very sort of traditional way of doing cartoon commercial work. So I like the process of doing the claymation work. I like the fact what it's done for the industry as well. And I like the fact it's very easy to teach students. If students want to actually learn how to do animation, it's a very quick way of getting to understand how timing, movement works in animation.
What is stop animation?
Stop frame animation, again, you're going back to a very traditional way of working with animation, which is still a very popular way of working as well now. And it is basically the idea of getting small objects, inanimate objects, whether it can be a small puppet, a small character, moving those characters just to a twelfth of a second each time, pressing a button, recording that frame. Once you play it back at a normal speed of 24 frames a second, you're going to get your stop frame animation. Digital animation is, again, it's taken all the traditional ways of doing animation work, whether it's drawn animation, 3D animation work, and it's just being produced on the computer. So it's cutting down the process by allowing you to do everything on the computer rather than different stages of production. So you can start with nothing on the computer, work through in a digital way, using various types of software, and actually producing the animation work on the computer.
How is animation used in the 21st century?
Well, I think that what's really interesting about animation, certainly at the moment, is that real boom time is going through at the moment, especially over the last sort of 10-15 years, which has been brought about by the introduction of the new technologies which has come around, which has made it much more accessible for anybody to have a go at doing their own animation work now. You don't have to rely on a studio to do that, you don't have to rely on lots of expensive equipment. You can pretty much pick up anything, start to work on the computer, and you're creating animation. And I think that's led to a real difference in its output for animation work, where again you traditionally used maybe a lot in commercial work, maybe obviously feature films it was used for that as well, but now it's used in a lot more different ways. It's very big in the music industry for using animation work. It's very big obviously with looking at websites. Now there's not a great deal of websites you can click onto without seeing some form of animation on there. The game industry has really boosted the output of animation work as well, not just from the sort of the programming side of things, but obviously from all the sort of the front enders of videos you get for games, the back enders you get for games as well. And I think the one thing that's made the animation industry much more interesting, apart from the output that it's got, is actually the way people started off by getting into animation. And again, traditionally, you're looking back only about 15, 20 years ago, there's very, very few animation courses around in the country. If you wanted to get into animation at that point, you would tend to go to film school rather than art school. And then suddenly the art school thought, well, this is a new creative tool that they want to use, filmmaking, animation work. They've introduced that into the art and design curriculums now. So suddenly what you're getting is more creative artists wanting to produce films rather than people who just want to be filmmakers.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I went around the college and questioned people on what they think is animation and what animations they like.
Who's your favourite type of animation and why?
I think my favourite type of animation would probably have to be like the anime art style, mainly because it's just that, it's more of an art style in itself as well as a form of animation. It's a very artistic style to it.
I think for mine it would have to be the computer generated animation. I just think because it's basically it's like the animation of the future. It always looks very realistic. It's almost it's very film-like. I think helps to catch the mood.
My favourite type of animation is stop motion, purely because of the fact of it's just like the time and effort that it takes to take each individual shot, and then when you layer them all together, that it actually creates like, say, something that's moving that generally wouldn't move. So you can make like Lego men running along and having little fights and stuff. I think that's really cool. Just like general everyday things that you can make it so it looks as if they're kind of got their own kind of little world that they live in, like toasters just randomly making toast all the time without any input. It's pretty cool. Stop motion.
Tim Holmes and others have shown that animation is still a fantastic thing and will be around for years to come.